Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
Alright, let me tell you about this whole mess I've been dealing with lately. It's been driving me up the wall, I swear. So here's the deal. I've got this outdoor kitchen that I've been wanting to set up for ages. You know, one of those fancy setups where you can cook outside and entertain guests. Yeah, that's the dream. But here's where it gets complicated. I need a propane tank for it. Simple enough, right? Wrong. I live in this neighborhood with an HOA, and let me tell you, they're making this way harder than it needs to be. I thought I'd just pop an above-ground propane tank in the yard and be done with it. But no, these HOA folks are giving me the runaround like you wouldn't believe. So I decided to do my homework. I looked up all the rules and regulations on the HOA website. I even found this new bill that's supposed to protect homeowners from overzealous HOAs. I mean, I'm not trying to cause trouble here. I just want to have a nice outdoor kitchen without breaking the bank or tearing up my whole yard. Now get this. The HOA rules say something about gas containers not being allowed on the exterior of homes or lots, except for things like pools, hot tubs, and permanent barbecues. But here's the kicker. It says you need prior written consent from the ACC, which I'm guessing is their Architectural Control Committee or something like that. And even if they approve it, they want the tank either underground or behind some fancy decorative wall. I thought, okay, fair enough. I'll ask for permission. So I sent them an email explaining what I wanted to do. I figured they'd be reasonable about it. I mean, it's just a propane tank, not a nuclear reactor or anything. Was I in for a surprise? They came back with this response that just left me scratching my head. The person who replied said they'd talked to the Encino Estates Board. That's our HOA. And apparently these folks have decided it has to be underground. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Now, here's where I start to get a bit steamed. Burying this tank is going to cost me at least an extra grand, maybe more. And it's not just about the money. They want me to stick this thing smack in the middle of my yard. I mean, come on, I've got plans for that space. I don't want a big patch of dirt where I can't plant anything because there's a propane tank lurking underneath. The HOA person tried to smooth things over by offering to help me with the paperwork for an underground installation. But that's not the point. I don't want an underground tank. I want an above-ground one that's safe, properly installed, and doesn't cost me an arm and a leg. So I started digging deeper. I found this new law, HB 1203, that's supposed to put some limits on what HOAs can do. From what I understand, it says that if an HOA denies a request for building something or making improvements, they have to give the homeowner a written notice. This notice is supposed to spell out exactly which rule or covenant they're using to justify the denial. Now, I'm no lawyer, but it seems to me like they're not following this law. All they've given me is this vague email about how it must be underground because of numerous cases in the Grand Palms community. What does that even mean? What cases? What community? We're in Encino Estates, not Grand Palms. It's like they're just making stuff up as they go along. I've been talking to some of my neighbors about this, trying to get their take on it. Most of them think the HOA is being ridiculous. A few of them have told me stories about their own run-ins with the board. It seems like these folks just love to flex their authority, even when it doesn't make sense. One of my buddies, Mike, not his real name, he's got an above-ground propane tank for his pool heater. It's been there for years and the HOA has never said a word about it. So why are they giving me such a hard time? It just doesn't add up. I've been losing sleep over this, I'm not gonna lie. Every time I look out at my backyard, I see the space where my outdoor kitchen should be, and it just frustrates me all over again. I've put so much thought into this project. I've got plans drawn up, I've picked out the grill, the countertops, everything. And now it's all on hold because of this propane tank nonsense. I've been thinking about challenging the HOA on this. I mean, their own rules say they can approve above-ground tanks in some cases, and this new law seems to be on my side too. But man, I really don't want to get into a big legal battle with these people. I've got to live here, you know. I don't want to be known as the guy who sued the HOA, but at the same time, I can't just roll over and let them push me around like this. It's my property after all. I pay my dues, I follow the rules, most of them anyway, and I try to be a good neighbor. Is it really too much to ask to have a propane tank where I can see it and access it easily? I've been doing some research online, looking at other HOA disputes and how they've been resolved. It's amazing how many people have gone through similar things. Some of them have won their cases, others have lost. It's a real mixed bag. One thing I've learned is that documentation is key. So I've been keeping copies of all my emails with the HOA, screenshots of their rules from the website, and notes from every phone conversation. If this does end up turning into a bigger issue, I want to make sure I've got all my ducks in a row. I've also been looking into alternatives. Maybe there's a way to compromise here. I've seen some pretty slick propane tank enclosures that might satisfy the HOA's requirement for a decorative safety wall. They're not cheap, but they might be less expensive than burying the tank, and at least I'd still have easy access to it. Another option I'm considering is going with a smaller portable propane tank. It wouldn't be as convenient as a permanent installation, but it might be a way to sidestep this whole issue. I could just wheel it out when I need it and store it in the garage when I'm done. It's not ideal, but it might be better than nothing. The more I think about it, the more frustrated I get with this whole HOA system. I mean, I get why they exist. Nobody wants to live next door to someone who paints their house neon green or lets their yard turn into a jungle. But there's got to be a balance between maintaining community standards and allowing people some freedom with their own property. I've been talking to my wife about all this, and she's just as annoyed as I am. She's the one who really pushed for this outdoor kitchen in the first place. She had visions of hosting these great summer parties, cooking up a storm for all our friends and family. Now she's talking about putting the house on the market and moving somewhere without an HOA. I think she's overreacting a bit, but I can't say I blame her for being upset. The thing is, we really like this neighborhood otherwise. It's quiet, the schools are good, and we've made some great friends here. The idea of uprooting our lives over a propane tank seems crazy. But at the same time, if the HOA is going to be this unreasonable about every little thing, maybe we'd be better off somewhere else. I've been thinking about bringing this up at the next HOA meeting. Maybe if I can talk to the board members face to face, I can get them to see reason. I could bring pictures of other above-ground propane tanks in the neighborhood, show them my plans for how it would be installed safely and discreetly. Maybe if they can see how much thought I've put into this, they'll be more willing to work with me. But then again, I'm worried that if I make too much noise about this, they'll start looking for other ways to make my life difficult. I've heard stories about HOAs that target troublemakers with all kinds of petty violations. The last thing I need is to be getting fines every other week because my grass is half an inch too long or my trash cans are visible from the street. It's just so frustrating, you know? I feel like I'm banging my head against a wall here. All I want to do is improve my home, make it more enjoyable for my family and friends. I'm not trying to cause problems or lower property values or anything like that. If anything, an outdoor kitchen would probably increase the value of my house. I keep coming back to that new law, HB 1203. It seems like it was written specifically to prevent situations like this, where HOAs can just arbitrarily deny requests without proper justification. I'm thinking about reaching out to a lawyer just to get their take on it. Maybe a strongly worded letter from an attorney would be enough to get the HOA to back down. But then I worry about the cost. Lawyers aren't cheap and there's no guarantee it would work. Plus, if it did turn into a legal battle, it could drag on for months or even years. By the time it's all settled, I might not even want the outdoor kitchen anymore. I've been losing sleep over this, I really have. It's amazing how something that seemed so simple at first can turn into such a complicated mess. Every time I think I've found a solution, I run into another roadblock. At this point, I'm not sure what my next move should be. Do I keep pushing the HOA for approval? Do I look for a compromise? Do I just give up on the whole idea? Or do I go nuclear and challenge them legally? It's a tough call, and I honestly don't know what the right answer is. One thing's for sure, though. This whole experience has definitely changed my perspective on HOAs. I used to think they were just there to keep the neighborhood looking nice. Now I see how much power they really have and how that power can be misused. I guess for now, I'll keep gathering information and weighing my options. Maybe I'll reach out to some of the other homeowners, see if anyone else has had similar issues. There's strength in numbers after all. Who knows, maybe we can get the HOA to revise some of these outdated rules. In the meantime, my dream of an outdoor kitchen is on hold. But I'm not giving up. One way or another, I'm going to find a solution to this propane tank problem. It might take some time, and it might not be exactly what I had in mind originally, but I'm determined to make it happen. After all, a man's home is his castle, right? Even if that castle comes with an HOA. You have zero standing on these rules, but there may be another avenue. The rules do not grant you the right to have an above-ground tank. They only grant you the right to have an above-ground tank when it, and its enclosure, are compliant with the ARC. The board ARC no longer believes above-ground tanks are acceptable due to local issues, and are categorically denying above-ground tanks, requiring them to be buried. As written, if the ARC board no longer want to allow above-ground tanks, they do not have to. It doesn't matter if anyone else previously installed one. This is where you might find relief, but I would honestly advise against it. The document you provided is an operating rule, which is enacted by a simple majority of the board. The board must have the authority to create a rule on this, though, and that authority would stem from the CC&Rs. Look up your CC&Rs and see what they say about tanks. If this rule contradicts the CC&Rs or is not something the HOA can regulate based on the CC&Rs, you may be able to challenge it. Challenging it would create a very bad relationship with the HOA, though, and I am not sure this is something worth taking a stand on, especially since their reply offered constructive help on submitting an underground ARC request. Most boards would say, no, needs to be underground, and make you fend for yourself. You should definitely look up the CC&Rs to see if this is something you can fight, but I don't really think this is something worth fighting over. You can also ask the HOA to cite the rule in the CC&R for compliance with the new law. If you take that route and try to push them on a technicality, you should pretend to be stupid, so they don't think you are antagonistic. While that law requires written notice, there is no real substantial penalty, so they can just send you the written notice and then they are compliant. They don't have to approve underground either, but that is not a just answer if you are giving two options, so my option is the latter. Why even have the other option, lol? Just seems like they pick and choose who they want. The president always gave me a hard time. I also remember seeing someone with one, but it was a bit ago. Unfortunately, HOAs are overly represented by older property owners who tend to have more free time on their hands, which ends up with overrepresentation of old retired people and really dumb rules so they can feel like they did something productive. If you look at Japan's zoning, it's very simplified compared to America's, and you'll see why housing is extremely affordable in Japan. Basically, there's more incentive to build taller, and there's no local housing authority like an HOA. Zoning is handled at a higher bureaucratic level, and they don't argue over things like what grass should everyone be forced to feed, water, and cut.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.